Hi, and welcome to Models of the Future Workplace. We're grateful to have you with us here at Silicon Slopes. We are thankful to our sponsors today, R0, r0.com, and fascinating fact for you, we're joined today by Reza Ahmadi, who, among many other things, is the chair of culture and the organizational chapter, org chapter for Silicon Slopes. But that is like a small sliver of who you are. But before we go into who you are, tell us what R0 means. What does that mean?
I was thinking about what it means for a little bit, and then it dawned on me that it stands for R0, which I believe is the rate of spread of a virus. So R0 would mean
smart.
that there is no spread.
No spread. This is a really cool startup company based now in Utah. So check them out, r0.com. They do incredible things to help keep your office environment safe, including deploying these crazy cool robots, which give you superpowers, actually. So if you press, if you turn the light on and you stand in front of the light for long enough, you will somehow gain some superpower. Just kidding. Don't actually do that. But you should check out r0.com. I am Arian Lewis. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Kiln. We are a flex office solution for startups, and it just so happens that at our new location in Park City, Kiln Park City, we have an R0 in one of our meeting rooms, and what it does is it recirculates the air, charges it with great positive ions and oxidizers, cleans it up, makes it really safe for you and your teams to work inside of. Check out kiln.com, and now let's go to Reza. Reza, tell us about you. Take us through 2 minutes of who is Reza Ahmadi, and what brought you to this seat today?
Yeah, I don't know if it'll take 2 minutes is the challenge here, but I'm Reza Ahmadi. I'm an organizational psychologist, and I lead Emergent Solutions. So we're a boutique management consultancy. We're here in Salt Lake, and we're in the Bay Area. And our specialties are organizational strategy, culture design, organizational change, and leadership development. And the reason why I think I'm here is to talk about workplace strategy, which is actually it's an area that I've practiced in for a long time, and I think has particular relevance to sort of the world, the corporate and the organizational world emerging post-COVID. But basically what that means is taking a dedicated and focused approach to thinking about how space, technology, business process, and culture, or the social element, combine to deliver, help an organization deliver on their business objectives. So that's something that I have a passion around, and has kind of been something that I've evolved into, about
That's a nice
20 years of
framework.
consulting.
You said the four were space, technology, process, and culture.
Correct.
That's your diagram there. This is really cool because we've had HR experts, we've had founders of companies, we've had a variety of different perspectives come on and talk about the future workplace. But this is what you do. This is your job. You're an expert in workplace strategy. So is that right? Fair?
I guess some people would say that is one of the things we do and have expertise in. Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Cool. Okay. So you've been working with companies on helping. Have you been working with companies on helping them formulate their workplace strategy over the last 12 months, or?
Yes, so elements of that. I've had ongoing clients, both in government here locally, as well as tech and so forth, and also going back to the Bay Area, where we were founded. And they've been grappling with things like space and remote work and alternative strategies. As you know, for instance, take Utah State government. They've over a year and a half, 2 years ago, the governor put out a mandate to go 30% remote for eligible employees. So their work, for instance, has been ongoing, right?
Oh, really? So they're doing that into the future. They said, we want 30% of our workforce remote.
Yeah, that started back, I believe,
Wow.
in mid-2018, and it's accelerated under now Governor Cox to be something like 50%.
Wow.
So I was involved in some of that, and now that we have this, now that the impact of the pandemic is really felt, and we understand what it is, and remote work is set in, the question has shifted. And it's shifted in a significant way, and now we're dealing with, if you could call it, and I'm hesitant, sort of fingers crossed when I say this, that we're nearing the tail end of the pandemic, and organizations are really beginning to think more about, well, what is our strategy going forward?
Right.
We were in the office, we went remote, we adapted quickly. Some of it works, some of it didn't. What do we do in the next phase?
Okay, so you're a management consultant, you're a workplace strategy expert. If you're talking to a company, let's say this company has 50 employees right now. What's your direction to the exec team in that company in terms of how they should look to formulate their workplace strategy going forward?
Right. So if I had to, plant one seed or one idea for them to pursue, would be, instead of thinking about, is my future in the office, is it remote, or is it hybrid? First, get away from that question, right? And I see a lot of companies doing this now. They're beginning, organizations dealing with, well, how many days a week should we? Is the magic number 2? Is it 3? I want us to back up a little bit and ask some fundamental questions. And the first one that I would plan,
you better have your pens and paper ready.
Get ready.
This is a once in a lifetime opportunity. Go.
So, I would ask them to focus on the question, what is the compelling reason that I would ask somebody to come back in the office? Right?
Okay, that's good.
Yeah. So what is that compelling reason? So when we ask that question, and I've had an opportunity, through some surveys and some employee engagements to ask that, right? What we get back are generally 3 things, if I could bubble it up to that. And one of them is some people just work better in the office. So that's their compelling reason. There's a whole host of reasons why that might be, right? So a productive individual space. And then when you look at it from the management perspective, that becomes more about the social and culture. So the reason now I'm asking, the reason why it's important to ask the question is, if the compelling reason to come back to the office is to drive social engagement or culture, right? What is the optimum setting for that?
Interesting.
So,
I see the logic there. So
right?
What strategy do we deploy if that's the reason?
Exactly.
Not the question, should we be hybrid? Should we be full-time? Blah, blah, blah. That's a really great point.
Yeah, and it's not, you can look at it from the standpoint of a workplace strategy, but the element, typically when we say that, somehow people begin to separate the management practice components of it from that. So if just give you an example, like let's say if my goal is to bring people back so we continue to maintain the culture that we had, right? And to some extent, for the past year, we've been living on borrowed culture, and it's eroding now, we can sense it.
Is that a common theme, by the way?
Totally. Because we never really adapted to the remote environment, we just did a patchwork.
Folks, the sands are shifting under your feet as we speak. You got trouble, my friends. All right, keep going.
So let's say culture is the reason we want to bring people back in. If my management practices stay the same, and I'm asking that person who is very productive, like let's say, cranking away at home on their focused work, whatever they're doing.
Right.
And I ask him to bring them back in, and then you've got 10 people sitting in separate workstations or an office doing the same thing they would have done at home, except you're adding a commute to it, and whatever it may be.
That's a good point. It's a reality check.
Did you accomplish your goal of building culture? No. Maybe you would have gotten more mileage if you would have kept them at home and done volunteer work at planting trees at Alta, right? You see, so that's the kind of, I'm asking management, I think, hey, we can be more deliberate about it, we can be smarter about it, and this is not to criticize any company that says we're going to come back 3 days a week. That's fine.
Keep that microphone up to your
I
mouth there.
Forget about
I
this
know
thing.
but it feels so good once you get into the mode on it.
Yeah.
But we want to make sure everybody's you better be picking up on this incredibly golden advice. Okay, so that's a really great. I think that's a very solid point. You should be asking yourself the why. Be careful that you don't tell your company, "Hey, we're coming back because we want you to be, collaborating and have culture," and then stick them in a pod or stick them in some empty space without people around them. So you have to really rework your strategy if that's the why.
I think so, and you have to think about your management practices, and if you think about, there's sort of a process continuum, and So if you're taking a startup of 50 people and they're taking in customer feedback and they have to adapt very quickly and, those types of things, there's a time savings in being together, right? If you're a more established company and you have set processes and standard operating procedures and all that kind of stuff, and people know what they're doing, you have a longer sort of bandwidth. Instead of 3 days a week in the office, maybe you're out 2 weeks at a time and in for a week. Like, it doesn't have
But
to
really
be a
focused collaboration time when you come back in.
Focused collaboration. And one thing I would caution even the younger companies, right, is we talk about innovation. I mean, innovation is certainly very important to the survival of any company. And the idea is that to innovate, to collaborate, to create, we need to be together. In fact, the way it happens is ideas come together, things are sparked, right? Then people take those ideas, retreat, collect information, consume knowledge, process, think, generate, come back to the group, and that's how you move. It moves in spurts, but there's a big chunk of thinking time that those smart people you're hiring need.
Yeah.
And that might be at their house.
It could be at their home.
Yeah.
Oh, but you're saying it isn't necessary. Innovation doesn't just occur when we're all like around a whiteboard together.
Right.
And
right.
that's a great point. But it can also be challenging at home, right? I mean, there are a lot of distractions. What have you learned about working at home?
Yeah, so I'm one of those people who's totally lived the challenges of working from home. I've spent a lot of my career being remote because I've worked on consulting teams that were national. So I've had some practice at that and just being a mobile employee for a long time. But this has been a unique period because my kids are at home and I'm sharing an office with my wife, and you don't get the release of being with people. So what this has reinforced for me is that to really get good at remote has its impediments for sure, right? And there's certain things that are always going to be better in person, but we can get a lot more mileage out of remote now if we're deliberate about it. So, for instance, a lot of the things that happen in an office organically, running into somebody just looking up, glancing, those types of things, a 30-second meaningful connection with somebody that can go remarkably far, right, in somebody's day, that kind of stuff isn't going to happen naturally at home. So how do you make it happen? You have to be deliberate about it. It sounds super sterile to think about it this way, but you kind of got to plan it. You got to plan what would have been spontaneity before, right? Kind of takes the fun out of it a little bit, but that's how you achieve that. And then there's certain things you need to pay attention to. I think they throw out the 3 C's, and I forget sometimes what they mean, but communication, collaboration, connection, or /culture, right?
I thought it was like
to those.
Kids, candy, and Coppercorn. I don't know what it was, but I'm just saying. So go back to the 3 C's. Everybody write this down. Yeah,
but so those are the things to be deliberate about. Like if you know that you're not going to have the spontaneity and you're not going to organically create those situations. Sure. Okay, so how do you do them? And focus on your communication. Who do you need to communicate with? When? How often? What content? That kind of stuff.
This is very interesting.
Collaboration,
because
same thing.
I have heard, we've had conversations about, okay, got to get my computer over to my house, got to figure out how to VPN into my employer, blah, blah, blah. But we haven't had a lot of insights come out about how do you really deploy an effective work remote strategy, like as an individual worker? Like what's my framework for how I'm effective on a daily basis? How can I measure if I'm improving or not improving in my ability to work remotely? That's a really interesting.
Yeah, and you can kick it up to the team level too, right? If you're managing a small team or something like that. For instance, what would keep us from having instead of a stand-up meeting in the morning, a quick little 15-minute check-in, right?
Right.
Something like, those are things that you can adapt. You just have to be deliberate about, making them happen. One of the things that I'm going to throw out there, and it might be earth-shattering for some people, but before the pandemic, I probably spent 30% of my week on some sort of remote collaboration, generally a conference call, right? Mm-hmm. Sometimes long working sessions and so on. Now, for some reason, all of them have to be on video.
Yeah.
Why? Because if I'm having
I'm sure you're going to hit a funny bone with some
well,
people
I
right now.
have a couple of colleagues that I know so well. We're not gonna, she's wearing her pajamas.
We
or
won't
whatever.
name names.
Yeah, she doesn't want to get on screen.
Yeah.
But you know what? When I'm talking to her and I'm having a casual
Jill,
conversation,
we're talking about you, Jill. Just kidding.
It's super refreshing not to be on camera and to just be able to put my feet up like on the corner of my desk.
Yeah.
And be in like a thinking space with that person, right? Why can't we do it? Because here's the reason I bring that up is people talk about, oh, I'm so burnt out on Zoom. Well, you know what? What percentage of your day when you were in person did you sit and look somebody in the eye? Or maybe 6 people in the eye for like 4 hours of your day?
Six, yeah, because you're like always trying to hit all 6 people, right?
We're having a conversation, and I've probably spent maybe 3% of that conversation looking directly at you.
Really? I mean, is there?
Maybe.
Do you have a problem with that?
No, but
Okay, good. So going back to the whole, so are you kind of saying like, hey, we need to actually maybe be a little more strategic about the number of hours that we're having a virtual video call versus a phone call?
Yes.
And what would be the framework for deciding, should this be a virtual call or should this be a phone call?
I think that's up to people to determine. I mean, the one for me is you're going on video, so you can create you can get to real life in some ways and read body language and make a connection face to face, right? Be able to read them a little bit better. But if you know that person and you've worked together for years, is that necessary? I don't know.
I hear you. That makes sense.
Know. And then the other thing that also bugs me is why are there so many more scheduled meetings? Like, what's the problem with just getting on the phone, just giving me a call? I might answer it. Yeah. Like those are some things that kind of just are mysteries to me of why we swung so hard to the other direction.
What do you think the productivity impact is? I mean, I agree with you. I think there are more meetings. So what what do you think that does to, if we said the productivity factor was affected by what percentage, what would you guess?
It's hard to say, but I'd put it at least like 10, 15%. And I'm speaking, I haven't studied it. So I'm speaking
from your gut.
Speaking from my gut, the way I experience it when I observe others, like for instance, my wife that I share an office with, or my colleagues, that's what it is.
Interesting.
Because if you think about the dynamic in your day, you got a scheduled meeting, right? It's right there. This meeting ends, okay, I've got 10 minutes before the other meeting. What are you going to do? I mean, how many people are going to like bang out an email or make a call or squeeze something in that 10 minutes? That's 10 minutes wasted before your next meeting.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Whereas if you were in the office, you could have easily started doing something else, and that next meeting could have just organically happened.
Yeah.
Popped up for a second and gone. The other thing to think about is the setup. If you just interact with somebody in person versus now I've got a call coming up, I got to prepare, I got to sit down, I got to turn on the mechanics of it, eat away, chip away a little bit at a time. But it's hard to put your finger on it.
Okay, so in your work as a workplace strategist, among other management strategy work that you do, I would assume you're engaging with companies as they're about to build out a new space or they're going into a new market.
Yeah.
Okay, so take us through what you think is going to change with the way companies approach that equation now versus pre-pandemic.
Right. So pre-pandemic, any company or organization that, like, let's say, would have engaged, us to take a look at the issue, we would have gone in there, tried to understand their mobility, apply that, see if there's any, how they could work remotely. Does that translate to a real estate savings? Does it translate to, satellite spaces or other type of strategies rather than one single big office, right? And that would run its course. It would be sometimes an entertaining discussion, but nothing that senior managers, senior leadership would be able to, want to pull the trigger on very quickly, right? They dragged their feet. It would take a long time now and the reason for that was cultural. Can we really do this? Now we've passed the cultural hurdle. it's a much easier conversation. Of course, we're not going to be in the office in the same way we were before. So yes, all these strategies are more realistic now, and I can actually pursue them. So looking out, I would expect organizations to basically be a lot more flexible with their strategies, reduce the amount of space they hold, and moving some of that space to use more flexible options.
Ooh, I like the sound of that.
That would be my guess.
I like the sound of that.
That would be
so,
my guess.
it is interesting. 86% of recent respondees to a CBRE survey of tenants of all this, CBRE tenants,
right.
Said that they're going to use, 86% said they're going to use flex office in some form or fashion going forward. And I think that's largely going to be satellites or smaller companies, like satellites of big companies and then smaller companies. It's hard for especially small companies to commit to a long-term real estate play. But the office still plays an important role. If the office was the leading lady before COVID, what is the office now? Like, how would you define the role of the office, at least what you think it will be defined as post?
So she's the office is still the leading lady. She's probably dressed differently or singing a different tune or something like that. That's how I would characterize it.
Okay.
So for many years, this is going back now a couple of decades, which kind of dates me, but the concepts of activity-based working. So when I was talking about be more deliberate and ask the questions of what are the compelling reasons, right? That ideally should result in a list of activities and things that are important in your organization, right? And they're common. I mean, we're all professional workers. Like, there's going to be a lot of commonality across organizations, right?
Yeah.
In different sectors. So we know more or less what those are. The trick is to now design that future space and create a future space that provides the right mix of environments to accommodate those activities. So just a very sort of crude way of putting it.
Yeah.
An office built in the 90s, a traditional office environment built in the 90s, may have had 2 or 3 types of environments. A private office, a workstation of some sort, and some array of larger conference rooms.
Yeah, meeting rooms.
Yes.
Yeah.
That is likely to be 7 environments in the future.
Right. Yeah.
A bigger mix of spaces.
Yeah.
Things like libraries and various things that we've never even thought about.
Have you been to Kiln? Have you actually been to Kiln?
No, because the pandemic hit and I couldn't go anywhere.
Okay, so you're getting the invite right now, live. I really would love for you to come check us out. But one of the things that we've learned is, oftentimes you'll walk past a conference room in one of these old 1990s buildings. You'll see a 12-person conference room, and there'll be one person sitting in there having a call, right? So at Kiln, we create our own products, and we actually have a 4-person phone booth, which is really ideal for 2 people, but you can fit 4 people in there. And then we've got single-person phone booths, and then we got 4-person meeting rooms, and we've 6-person and 8-person, and it's about giving a lot of optionality.
Yes.
Tell me, what do you think if we were to take our Jetson moment? Did you watch the Jetsons growing up?
Yeah.
Yeah, they were so cool.
Cool.
Yeah. So if we were to have a Jetson moment, describe to me the office of the future, the Jetson office, 5 years from now.
5 years from now.
Paint the picture.
First of all, I'd really like to come visit Kiln, and I'm going to take you up on that invitation.
Okay.
Even in pandemic, but so that's my way of buying time here on what.
Yes. You're stalling.
Yes.
Yeah.
In 5 years, I think that office is going to. Well, I think there's going to be some organizations that are just going to go right back to where they were.
Got it.
Right, and I don't know where
Banks
I put
of
that.
desks.
Yeah, I don't know what I
open
put
floor
that.
plates.
Yep. I don't know what that
CEO
percentage
in the corner
would be.
office.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But we know exactly what that recipe is.
Yeah.
But I'm thinking that in 5 years, the organizations that start thinking about, really in a structured way, in a smart way, thinking about the interplay between, the office, their culture, the activities that they want to support, what gets them to those business results. I think in 5 years, they're going to be more activity-based settings. So I think the office is going to be, and this sounds super cliche, but more the place where they might go and touch down. So it's not like about going and I work. I go to work.
It's like home base.
I work, and today I'm going into our home office.
Into the base.
Into the base.
Got it.
Right. And so that's what
For
I think.
For a particular activity.
For a particular activity.
Got
yes.
it. Not necessarily to work.
Exactly.
You know what? I actually
think more
you're
of it
right.
is actually going to be about the social.
I think you're right. I do think that one of the interesting points you brought up earlier was that for a young company that's changing quickly, the efficiency of time of just being able to turn to the person next to you and address a problem or an issue is helpful. But for the bigger companies who are dealing with very large functions, very built-out processes, I definitely think they will go more toward the direction you're speaking of, which is activity-based, focused kind of zones where I come into the office to do a specific activity rather than to do my job.
Right, right.
Yeah.
And
By the way, Domo is doing something really cool in this kind of space and idea. I'll just drop that little thing out there, and maybe somebody else will comment or share more about that. But I think there are companies that are really thinking about this and kind of going down that path.
Well, I think that's great. You know, one of the things that I'd put out there for anybody who's dealing with the real estate question is organizations change a lot faster, markets and products change a lot faster than real estate does. So if you plan for today and you expect what you plan today, if it's a very static and highly specialized for one thing, that might not be relevant in 2-3 years. So you should start thinking about flexibility and creating an environment that, you know, can shift with your organization.
Modular. It's modular.
Be relevant as you change.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with you. Product life cycles continue to shrink. I think the Model T Ford was made for something like 50 years or some crazy amount of time. And now, of course, we expect a new car to come out every year. And like the iPhone is new every year, but I'm like, well, it's been 6 months. Where's the new iPhone, right? And I think that it's really interesting how customer expectations have shifted. And that means that they will adopt things a lot faster than they used to. And yet the real estate industry is underpinned by a huge financial world that is very resistant to change, and that relies on this very stable, very reliable coupon clipping model, right? Where they're wanting that credit tenant to come in and just keep those payments coming. And that's not really conducive to where a lot of startups go. Tech companies I'm referring to now, because we're at Silicon Slopes, I think we can talk about them. And you know, the I-15 here has a lot of examples of companies that thought, okay, we're going to sign this 10-year deal, we're going to have this whole thing, and then all of a sudden their markets change or their worlds change. What's the new talent strategy, and how does that talent strategy work into the future workplace? How has it changed?
Well, that's an interesting question, and you know, some of my HR colleagues might be able to answer that a little bit better. But you know, the talent market is constantly getting more competitive. I mean, we feel it here, right?
Yeah.
And to some extent, that's going to mean a shift in sort of the social contracts, right, between the individual and the organization. So. Think about it like if you just...
And by social contracts, you mean the informal expectations
what I expect
exist between an employee and an employer.
Totally. Like, what did my dad expect when he worked, you know, for an organization in the 70s versus what I expect from that organization? And one of the things, I'm glad you asked the question, because it brought to mind a piece of data that has been interesting for me, is as if we've been engaging some employees that are now fully hybrid and so forth, and asking about what's the future, what would compel you to go into an environment. The expectations have changed. So whereas before, as you give me, you know, X, Y, and Z, and it's pretty simple. It's like a workstation and good Wi-Fi and some food or whatever, right? Yeah. Now I have the choice of sitting outside on a nice day.
That's right.
I have the choice of hanging out, you know, on the couch.
Yep.
right? So
what
on
you're
and on and on,
describing
right?
to me is a shift from the functional to the experiential.
Yes, that's a great way to capture it.
And and I think you're right. Like we used to feel like I need to go into work so I can have the tools around me to perform my function.
Yes.
Whereas now it's like, no, I'm seeking a particular experience because I have access to the tools I need to function in my job wherever I go, kind of. This is not a new concept for you because you've been working remotely for a long time. But for a lot of people this last year, it became a very new concept. And one where that newfound freedom was hard to manage at times. I mean, when Fido wants to go for a walk and it's 2 o'clock and you've got a management meeting, you go for a walk with Fido on the management meeting, right? Sometimes that's a good thing. Sometimes it's not. Yeah. Fido always loves it, right?
Right.
Fido's the dog, by the way. Nobody calls their dog Fido anymore, do they? It's like, they call them like human names, like, Georgia or something like that.
Yeah, we're going to get a dog soon. Maybe I'll name him Fido.
Oh, Fido. I think it's a good call. My kids were talking about Benji. That was an old dog. That was a dog's name back in the day.
That you could do that.
You could probably make that work, huh? All right. It's like calling your car Herbie. But at any rate, so let's just finish on your final prophetic notes here. I really want to if you were to just tell somebody the future workplace strategy is, what is that strategy?
It's really about flexibility and choice. So, and that's going to mean different things to different organizations with, depending on what segments they're in, the type of work they're doing, and their portfolio of real estate. But the more we can think about choice and flexibility, I think is going to pay dividends. We've known this for a long time, and it's even more obvious now, both from the standpoint of your straight up spend on real estate, but on the other side, the experiential side and what you're doing from a talent management perspective, right? So I think that's really it, and I think I can't emphasize enough what a golden opportunity this is for organizations that have been just on the edge in terms of thinking about new ways to occupy space, hybrid work environments, different work arrangements. Now is the time to take advantage of what has happened, cement some of the practices, and really think about workplace strategy. And again, when I say workplace strategy, I want to make sure that the focus on management practices is not lost.
Right.
And that we're not only having a real estate conversation.
It's not about a place.
Or remote work
It's about a strategy, what you're saying.
Yeah.
And I think that was one of the really great takeaways. You shouldn't be asking yourself the question, should we be hybrid? Should we be office? That's not the right question. The question is, what is it that we want to achieve in terms of the outcomes for our business, and what's the best method to get there? So if it's we want a strong culture, don't bring people to the office and stick them in a cubicle, right?
Exactly.
So very great point. Any last thoughts?
No, that's it. I just want everybody to take advantage of this.
Reza, I could talk to you all day long. This has been a great conversation. Reza Ahmadi, give us a plug for your company one more time.
Just Emergent Solutions. We're, again, a boutique management consultancy here.
How do we find out more? URL?
Yeah, just ESODL.com. That stands for Emergent Solutions Organization Design Labs.
Cool.
Which is what we're all about.
Okay, very cool. And we're especially grateful today for our sponsor, R0.com. Really great technology helping keep the workplace safe and fighting those little COVID guys that spread around on occasion. They're just batting them right out of the air. Check them out, R0.com. Thank you to Silicon Slopes for supporting this series on models of the future workplace. I'm Arian Lewis at Kiln.co, working on building the future workplace ourselves, and we're really appreciative of your time today. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Pleasure to be here.